Have you ever wondered why some people slowly disappear from everyone's life? Not because they are angry, not because they hate people, but because something inside them quietly changes. Most people believe intelligent people enjoy loneliness. But what if that isn't true? What if they simply begin seeing the world differently? Tonight, I want to tell you the story of a young man named Adrian, a story that changed the way an entire town understood friendship, success, and silence. Perhaps, by the end of this story, you may understand yourself a little better too. Adrian lived in a peaceful town surrounded by forests, rivers, and mountains. Everyone knew him. He smiled often. He helped strangers. He attended every celebration. His phone never stopped ringing because everyone wanted something from him. Some wanted advice. Some wanted money. Some wanted his time. Some simply wanted someone to listen. And Adrian never refused. "If I can help," he always said, "I should." Years passed. Life looked perfect from the outside. But something strange slowly began happening. The more people Adrian met, the more exhausted he became. It wasn't physical tiredness. It was something much deeper. Every conversation felt heavier than before. Every gathering left him strangely empty. At first, he blamed work. Then he blamed stress. Then he blamed himself. Maybe. He was becoming selfish. Maybe. He was changing into someone cold. He couldn't explain it. Until one evening, everything changed. After finishing work, Adrian walked toward a quiet park at the edge of town. There he noticed an elderly man sitting alone beneath an enormous oak tree. The old man wasn't reading. He wasn't using a phone. He simply watched the sunset, as if he had nowhere else to be. Something about his peaceful face made Adrian stop. "You look troubled," the old man said gently. Adrian smiled politely. "Is it that obvious?" The old man chuckled. "Only to someone who has carried the same burden." Those words surprised Adrian. Without realizing why, he sat beside him. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Only the sound of birds returning home filled the evening air. Finally, Adrian whispered, "I don't understand what's happening to me. I used to enjoy people. I loved spending time with everyone. But now, I just want silence." The old man nodded slowly. "Do you think that makes you a bad person?" Adrian looked down. "Sometimes." The old man smiled. "Then let me ask you something. When was the last time someone asked how you were doing, without needing something afterward?" Adrian searched his memory. Minutes passed. The old man picked up 2 glasses from a nearby cafe. One was filled with crystal clear water. The other looked clean, but had a single drop of black ink falling into it every few seconds. "Which glass would you drink?" he asked. "The clear one." "Why?" "Because the other one keeps becoming polluted." The old man nodded. "Exactly. Your mind works the same way. If every conversation carries a little dishonesty, a little jealousy, a little manipulation, eventually your peace becomes polluted too." Adrian stared silently at the darkening water. The old man continued, "Most people believe exhaustion comes from working too hard, but sometimes it comes from carrying emotions that were never yours." That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. For the first time, he replayed hundreds of conversations in his mind. He remembered the friend who only called when money was needed, the coworker who smiled in meetings, then criticized him behind his back, the relative who celebrated every failure, but disappeared whenever something good happened. None of those moments had seemed important before, but now they connected like pieces of a puzzle. Suddenly, he wasn't remembering people. He was remembering patterns. And once he saw those patterns, he couldn't unsee them. Over the following weeks, something quietly changed. Adrian stopped forcing conversations. He no longer replied immediately to every message. He stopped attending gatherings that left him emotionally drained. He began taking long walks alone. At first, People noticed. Are you upset? Did we do something? Why are you avoiding everyone? Adrian didn't know how to answer, because the truth was, he wasn't avoiding people. He was protecting something far more valuable, his peace. One afternoon he returned to the old oak tree. The wise man was waiting there once again. You've become quieter, the old man observed. I have. Does it feel lonely? Adrian thought carefully. Then, for the first time in months, he smiled. No. It feels peaceful. The old man's eyes sparkled. Good, because now, your real journey is about to begin. He leaned forward and said quietly, most people spend their entire lives learning about others, but very few ever learn how to understand themselves. And until that happens, they mistake noise for connection, attention for love, and approval for happiness. Adrian listened carefully. He felt as though someone had finally spoken the words his heart had been searching for. Little did he know, the hardest lesson was still waiting for him, because discovering other people's true nature was much easier than discovering his own. The following morning, Adrian woke earlier than usual. For years, the first thing he had done every morning was check his phone. Messages, notifications, missed calls, requests. Someone always wanted something. But this morning, he did something different. He left the phone untouched. Instead, he opened his window. The morning breeze carried the scent of rain-soaked earth. Birds sang without trying to impress anyone. The trees stood silently, yet somehow they seemed more alive than the crowded streets. For the first time in years, Adrian simply breathed, and strangely, he felt lighter. Days turned into weeks. His routine slowly changed. Instead of filling every empty hour with conversations, he filled them with books. Instead of constantly explaining himself, he listened to his own thoughts. Instead of chasing approval, he began asking difficult questions. Who am I when nobody is watching? What kind of life do I truly want? How many of my choices belong to me? And how many belong to other people's expectations? Those questions frightened him, but they also set him free. One afternoon, Adrian met the old man again beneath the ancient oak tree. I've noticed something, Adrian admitted. The quieter I become, the more uncomfortable some people seem. The old man smiled knowingly. Of course. Why? Because your silence forces people to hear themselves. Adrian looked confused. The old man pointed toward the still surface of a nearby lake. When water is disturbed, you cannot see your reflection, but when the water becomes still, everything hidden appears. He paused. Silence works exactly the same way. Some people love peaceful people, but others fear them, because calmness exposes chaos. A few days later, Adrian attended a birthday celebration. The room was filled with laughter. Music echoed through every corner. People talked endlessly, yet something felt different. He quietly watched everyone. One man spoke loudly about his success, yet kept checking whether others were listening. Another woman constantly criticized absent friends. While smiling sweetly to their faces, several people laughed together, yet none of them truly listened to each other. For years, Adrian had thought these were ordinary conversations. No, he saw something deeper. Most people weren't communicating. They were competing. Competing for attention, for importance, for validation. He suddenly understood why crowded places often felt lonely. There were many voices, but very little honesty. Later that evening, a close friend approached him. You've changed. I'm simply learning where I belong. His friend laughed awkwardly. I don't understand. I know, Adrian replied softly. And that's okay. The next morning, the old man invited Adrian for a walk through the forest. As they walked, they reached a beautiful garden. Hundreds of flowers bloomed together. Butterflies floated through the air. Bees moved patiently from flower to flower. The old man asked, "What do you notice?" "They're beautiful." "What else?" Adrian looked more carefully. Then he realized something surprising. Every flower grew at its own pace. None tried to become another flower. The rose never envied the sunflower. The sunflower never copied the orchid. Each simply fulfilled its own purpose. The old man smiled. Nature never compares. Only people do. Comparison is one of the greatest thieves of peace. Every time you compare your life, you abandon the one God gave you. Adrian stood silently. He realized that many of his greatest sorrows had never come from failure. They came from comparison. Months passed. People slowly stopped inviting Adrian to meaningless gatherings. Some assumed he had become arrogant. Others whispered, "He thinks he's better than us now." Those words hurt, but not as much as they once would have, because Adrian finally understood something important. People often judge what they don't understand, and understanding isn't something you can force. One rainy evening, Adrian asked the old man, "Do intelligent people always end up alone?" The old man smiled warmly. "No. They simply stop chasing relationships that require them to pretend. They may have fewer friends, but they have deeper ones. They speak less, but every conversation carries meaning. They don't seek crowds. They seek connection." Then he looked directly into Adrian's eyes. The strongest people are not those surrounded by thousands. They are those who can sit alone with their own thoughts, without feeling empty. Adrian felt those words settle deep inside his heart. For years, he had feared loneliness. Now, he began seeing solitude differently. It wasn't isolation. It was restoration. And little by little, he was becoming someone he had never truly met before. But the greatest lesson was still waiting ahead. Because true transformation doesn't happen the day you choose peace. It happens the day you stop needing the world's approval to protect it. Winter slowly gave way to spring. The trees that had stood bare for months were covered with fresh green leaves. Flowers bloomed where silence had once lived. Nature had changed. And so had Adrian. He no longer counted how many people called him. He no longer measured his worth by invitations, compliments, or approval. Something inside him had become still. Not because life had become easier, but because his heart had finally become quieter. One afternoon, Adrian returned to the old oak tree for the first time. The bench was empty. The wise old man was nowhere to be found. Only a small wooden box rested beneath the tree. His name was written across the top. With trembling hands, Adrian opened it. Inside was a folded letter. It read, "If you are reading this, then you no longer need me. You have discovered the lesson I hoped you would learn. People spend their whole lives searching for the right friends, the right career, the right relationship, and the right opportunity. But very few spend time becoming the right person. Never allow loneliness to make you return to people who only valued your usefulness. Never mistake attention for love. Never sacrifice your peace simply because others are uncomfortable with your growth. Protect your mind the way a gardener protects a rare flower. Not everyone deserves access to your heart. Some people enter your life to help you grow. Others enter only to teach you who not to become. When you learn the difference, you will stop fearing solitude. You will finally understand freedom. There was no signature. There didn't need to be. Adrian already knew who had written it. Months later, the people in town continued talking about Adrian. Some still believed he had become distant. Others thought success had changed him. But those who truly knew him noticed something different. Whenever someone came to him carrying pain, he listened. Whenever someone genuinely needed help, he was there. Whenever someone sought wisdom, he spoke with kindness. He had not become cold. He had simply become intentional. His heart was still open, but no longer unguarded. One evening, A young university student approached Adrian. The young man looked exhausted. "I don't understand people anymore. I try so hard to make everyone happy, but no matter what I do, someone always criticizes me." Adrian smiled gently. He remembered asking almost the same question years earlier, instead of giving advice. He picked up a small stone and threw it into the nearby lake. Ripples spread across the water. "What do you see?" "The water moving." "And will it stay that way forever?" The young man shook his head. "No. Eventually, it becomes calm again." Adrian nodded. "So does the human heart? The opinions of people are like these ripples. They disturb your peace only if you keep staring at them. If you wait patiently, they disappear, but your character remains years past." Adrian slowly became known as one of the wisest people in the region. Travelers visited him from distant villages. Some asked, "How can I become successful?" Others asked, "How can I find true friends?" But Adrian always answered with the same question. Before asking who belongs in your life, ask whether you belong in your own. Most visitors were confused until they experienced life themselves. Only then did his words begin to make sense one quiet morning. Adrian returned once more to the old oak tree. He closed his eyes. The wind moved gently through the branches. Birds sang overhead. Children laughed somewhere in the distance. Everything felt beautifully ordinary. He suddenly realized something that brought tears to his eyes. For years, he had believed happiness would come from changing other people. Then he believed it would come from finding the perfect relationship. Then he thought it would arrive with success. But happiness had never been hiding in any of those places. It had been waiting, inside the silence, all along. This story isn't really about disappearing from people. It's about disappearing from the version of yourself that constantly searched for approval. The wisest people don't isolate themselves because they hate the world. They simply learn that their attention, their time, their peace, and their emotional energy are among the most valuable things they will ever possess. They stop explaining themselves to those determined to misunderstand them. They stop chasing relationships that survive only through sacrifice. They stop fearing solitude because they discover something far greater, a peaceful mind. Remember, not everyone who walks away is lost. Sometimes they are finally walking toward the person they were always meant to become. And perhaps, if you've been quietly changing lately, if your circle has become smaller, if you've chosen peace over popularity, then maybe you aren't disappearing at all. Maybe, for the very first time, you're finally finding yourself. If this story touched your heart, welcome to Tales by Hasiba. Here, we don't just tell stories, we explore the quiet truths of life, human nature, and personal growth through unforgettable journeys. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe and join our growing family. And before you leave, tell me in the comments, have you ever stepped away from people to protect your peace, or has someone quietly disappeared from your life? Your story might inspire someone else. Until our next story, take care of your heart, protect your peace, and never stop becoming the person you were created to be.